I was busy thinking about.
Baby, I got issues, but I love myself. Baby, I got issues, but I love myself. I don't like the way.
Hello fellow humans. This is part 3 of the Deku proposal series, so I suggest that you watch the other 2 before this. Link to part 1 and 2 will be in the description. It's finally the Deku wedding you've all been asking for. I'm sorry it took so long, but I'm happy with the end result. This video will include the following ships, so please be respectful. Disclaimer, there will be a bit of cussing, and if you guys have seen any of my other videos, you will know that I tend to include angst into them. There will be art, so all credit to artist. I have an Instagram account where I will be updating about posted and upcoming videos. Link will be in the description. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment for more content. Enjoy. Smiling face with hearts. After the wedding shower there was nothing else to do. Everything had already been set, and it was just a waiting game until the wedding. At least they thought everything was set. But Hugo was in the kitchen cooking dinner, when he heard his phone ring.
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too, I'm in love with your body.
It was his ringtone for Deku. He didn't know why, but Ed Sheeran's songs always reminded him of his fiancée. Plus the message wasn't exactly wrong. He turned off the stove, and wiped his hands with a cloth before picking up the phone. "What do you want, nerd?" A sigh followed by a soft laugh could be heard from the other side of the phone. "Hey Kachan. Can you do me a favor and find something for me in our room?" But Hugo started walking to their room as they continued their conversation. "What do you need?" "There should be a yellow folder in the top drawer of my nightstand. When you open it there should be a document on the left side. You can't miss it." But Hugo walked to Deku's side of the bed, and pulled out the drawer, immediately finding the folder. He opened it, and saw the document his fiancée was talking about. "I got it. What do you want now? Can you take a picture of it and send it to me?" But Hugo briefly looked it over, and noticed that it seemed to be more than just regular pro-hero paperwork. "Deku, this looks like some top secret shit. I can't send you something so sensitive over text." "I know, but I really need it today." The blonde deadpanned. "Then why didn't you bring it with you?" He didn't respond and but Hugo sighed. "You forgot it, didn't you?" A nervous chuckle could be heard from the other end. "You're a grown-ass adult, and you can't even bring a fucking piece of paper to work?" He face-palmed and dragged his hand down his face, too tired to full-on yell at him. "Icy Hot told me yesterday that he was going to take the night shift today. I'll ask him to come by and pick it up on the way to work." "Thanks Kachan. I love you." The hero smirked. Something about the way Deku said those words hit him in the best way possible. "I love you too, nerd. Don't come home too late." He ended the call and closed the folder. He then turned to put the folder back, when he saw something else in the drawer. Pulling it out, he saw that it was the guest list. He didn't think anything of it, until he saw what looked like the imprint of something written that wasn't there anymore. It was at the very bottom of the list. What the hell? He brought it closer to his face, and confirmed that there actually was something written there. Was. The blonde squinted his eyes, but he still couldn't tell what was written. He walked over to his and Deku's office, looking for a pencil on his desk. There. He picked up one of the pencils, and angled it so that he could use the side of it to shade the area. He could now clearly see what was written, and it left him completely puzzled. It was a name that he had never heard of before. Who the hell is Hisashi? But Hugo had already finished eating dinner, and was now sitting on the couch waiting for his partner to come home. He held the piece of paper in his hand, and something about it made him feel uneasy. The blonde didn't necessarily feel suspicious about anything, but he didn't like the fact that his fiancée wrote and erased an unknown name on their guest list for their wedding. It wasn't something he was just going to let slide. Before he knew it, he heard the front door open. Kachan, I'm home. What's for din? He stopped himself when he saw Kachan sitting in the living room with an odd expression. Kachan? Is something wrong? He took a step towards the blonde, but was stopped in his tracks when Bakugo spoke. Who's Hisashi? The hero's eyes blew wide in shock, and his breath was caught in his throat. This reaction set off an alarm in Kachan's head, and he started to wonder if he actually should be worried about something. His expression became serious, as he stood up, and held out the paper. Deku. Who is he? The green-haired man slumped over, and looked down to the ground. It's my dad. Bakugo slowly blinked a few times. Huh? Hisashi Midoriya, that's my dad's name. It took a solid second for the blonde to process it, before he half blew up at the other man. Seriously? God damn it, Deku. You scared the shit out of me. He let out an exasperated sigh, and plopped onto the couch. Seriously. Don't pull that shit on me. I was actually starting to worry there for a second. It's just your dad, so what's? His eyes shot wide, as he realized why Deku had reacted the way he did. Bakugo had been so focused on who it was, that he didn't even think about the fact that his fiancée had erased the name of his absent father. Bakugo looked up to see his lover with tears threatening to roll down his cheeks. Babe. Without hesitation, he quickly stood up, dropped the paper, and swiftly walked towards Deku to pull him into a comforting hug. The red-eyed man buried his face into the other's curly hair, kissing the top of his head as he held him. The shorter hugged him back, and hid his face against his fiancée's chest. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have been so insensitive. It's okay, I would have questioned it too if I saw a name I didn't recognize. Still. He slightly pulled away, and wiped off the tears from his lover's bright green eyes. Wanna talk about it? The shorter nodded, and Bakugo pulled him towards the couch when he was stopped. Let me shower first. I'm still dirty from work, and I don't wanna mess up the couch. That doesn't matter right now. They walked to sit on the couch, and Bakugo held Deku tightly against his side. Neither of them made a sound for what felt like forever. Why did you erase his name? I don't know. I don't know why I even wrote it down in the first place. The older man brushed his fingers through the other's green curly hair in a comforting gesture. I think I do. I think it's because you want him there for our special day. What's the point of wanting that though? He didn't show up for anything. Not my middle school promotion. Not my high school graduation. Nothing. Kachan, I haven't talked to him since I was a kid. I don't think he even knows I'm bisexual, let alone getting married to a man. He momentarily paused. How do I know if he'll even be accepting of us? The seemingly fatherless man broke and cried into his palms. Bakugo held him and shushed him, but in a comforting way. They stayed like that for a while, until Deku felt Kachan move. He looked up to see that his partner had pulled away from him and stood up. Kachan? I'm not going anywhere, just for a second, okay? Deku nodded, and watched as Bakugo left the room. Not even a minute had gone by before the blonde had come back. Deku was about to ask him what happened, when he saw a pencil in his hand, and the guest list that he picked up in the other. He bent over the table in front of the couch, and was erasing something from the paper. He then walked towards Deku, and knelt down in front of him, grabbing both of Deku's hands in his. I'm so sorry that you went through all that. I can't even begin to imagine how it must feel, but I also think that it's worth one last try. Bakugo turned to the side to show Deku a piece of paper, with a pencil lying parallel to it. It was the guest list, and it showed an empty space at the very bottom of the page. The place where the name was written. Kachan guided Deku's hand to hold the pencil. The hero looked at his encouraging fiancée, and managed to get the strength to sit down in front of the table. His hand hovered over the paper, and had started to shake. That was, until Bakugo placed his hand on top of his to calm him down. With his other hand, Bakugo held Deku supportively, as both of them lowered their hands to put the pencil against the paper. The green-haired man looked at his soulmate, and was reminded once again that as long as Kachan was there, he could do anything. He started to write the name, and put the pencil down when he was done. But Kachan, how am I even supposed to send the invite to him? Don't worry about the details. I'll talk to Mom and get it all taken care of. Bakugo kissed his forehead, and pulled back to see the bright green eyes that he had fallen in love with all those years ago. I'm so proud of you, Izuku. The younger slightly smiled and leaned up to place a kiss on the blonde's lips. The name was finally on the list. Hisashi Midoriya. A simple invite wouldn't have been enough to bring Hisashi Midoriya back into Deku's life, and Bakugo was painfully aware of that fact. That's why he included something extra to go with it. Bakugo was taking his lunch break when he started writing the letter. He wasn't sure whether it would be enough to bring the absent father back, but if there's one thing Izuku taught him, it was how to hope. Hey Baku bro. What's this? The redhead reached down to grab it, but Bakugo swat his hand away. This is a letter. Well duh, but who is it for? The blonde slowly raised his head and his eye twitched. Do you have any concept of privacy? The other just shrugged. Is that even a question? Plus we're besties. You would have told me eventually anyways. He didn't deny it, as he looked back down to the paper, making an irritated noise. I guess when you're around Pinky enough, you start to act like her. Well, I mean, she is my girlfriend. But seriously, who is that for? Bakugo hesitated before answering. Deku's dad. Kirishima's eyes bulged. Whoa. Isn't he like, non-existent in Midobro's life? Yet he isn't, which is why I'm writing this letter. Kirishima waited for him to finish. We're inviting him to the wedding. Whoa, seriously? He never showed up for any of Midobro's events before. What makes you think he'll come back now? The blonde put his pen down, and lifted the paper for his best friend to see. Hopefully, this. He then folded up the paper neatly, and slipped it into a white envelope that already had the invite in it. I haven't seen the guy since we were kids. It's about time he comes home. He sealed it, and neatly put it in one of the inner side pockets of the backpack he brought to work. After doing this, he told Kirishima he had to make a call, and walked away. He dialed the number, and patiently waited for her to pick up. Hello? The blonde smiled after hearing the sweet voice that he grew up with. Hey mom, it's Katsuki. Is it okay if I visit you today? I want to ask you for help on something. He was able to clock out early, and immediately headed to Enko's apartment. He knocked on the door, and patiently waited for her to answer it. The door opened, and Enko greeted him with a bright smile. Hi sweetie. Please, come in. She opened the door all the way, and they both settled down on the couch in the living room. Mom, I need help with something. Anything. Bakugo took out the envelope, and turned it so that she could see the name on the back of it. She gasped and covered her mouth. The woman looked at her soon-to-be son, and waited for an explanation. He kept his eyes on the envelope as he talked. Deku and I want to invite him to the wedding. We don't know if he'll show up, but we want to give it a shot. The only problem is that I don't know how to reach him. The man then looked up to meet her eyes. I was hoping that you would. She looked back down at the envelope and sighed. Hisashi and I are still legally married. I wouldn't necessarily say that we're separated, but we haven't talked for years. However, she put her hand on top of Bakugo's. If he's still the man I fell in love with, then he'll come. Especially if he knows it's from you. He softly smiled back at the older woman. Thanks mom. Enko was thankfully able to find Hisashi's new address, since he had moved again, and Bakugo was now able to send the letter. It was actually sending it that made the difference. After he had left Oenko's apartment, he had one last destination before going home. He held the white envelope in his hands as he stood in front of the mailbox. Hisashi Midoriya. That was the name on the back of the envelope. The name of the man who would hopefully read his letter and come to their wedding. He had triple checked with Oenko to make sure it was the right address, and now all he had to do was slip it into the mailbox. He let the envelope linger in his hands before dropping it in, letting out a nervous sigh, hoping that Hisashi Midoriya would show up. The wedding day had finally come, and the two grooms would be lying if they said they weren't freaking out at least a little bit. Deku was afraid for the second time about whether or not he was worth going through with it, but after a clear reminder from his friends about the whole thing Bakugo had done for him, he calmed down. The class hothead on the other hand, was still freaking out. Baku bro. He literally almost broke it off because he thought he wasn't good enough for you. You're doing the same thing you did before you proposed to him. Kirishima face-palmed. Wait, he's done this before? Yeah. He was pacing back and forth in the back of the reception building rambling to himself. I'm right here, 4 eyes. The blonde roughly ran his fingers through his hair. Damn it. I don't get why I'm so nervous. I've been waiting for this day for years, and now that the day has finally come I'm all worried. Then tell him that. The other 3 men in the room looked at Todoroki. What do you mean? You just said that you've been waiting years for this, and when you proposed you said that you loved him long before that. Tell him that at the altar when you say your vows. Bakugo sat on a chair, with his elbows on his thighs, and hands around the back of his neck. He let his head hang as he closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. After composing himself, he stood up, and took another deep breath. Okay, I'm good. I got this. He looked at the groomsmen who were in the room with him. Thanks guys, for being here. Bakugo looked at himself in the mirror one last time. He was wearing a black suit with a green tie that was the exact same color as his fiance's eyes. The blonde started walking towards the door and opened it. Here goes nothing. Bakugo was standing at the altar, getting more nervous as time went on. He's late. Bro, I know you're on top of everything, but it's only been 2 minutes. Plus he's with the girls, and knowing Mina, she probably tried styling his hair or something. As if on cue, Eureka, Mina, Momo, and Sue all rushed to stand on Deku's side of the altar. Kaminari leaned over the side of Kirishima, and Whisper yelled to the girls. Why are you guys so late? You should have been standing here like 10 minutes ago. Sorry guys. Mina was trying to style his hair, but it wouldn't stay so we just made sure his hair wasn't messy. Called it. In my defense, this church is an actual maze, and we had to do something with his hair. Bakugo Whisper yelled at her. I don't care if you did his hair or not. Where the hell is he? Just as he finished asking the question, music started playing. The blonde's heart began to race when he heard it. Deku on the other hand, was standing behind double doors with his mother by his side. Mom, I'm scared. Anko looked up at her grown boy, and softly touched his cheek. You have nothing to worry about, sweetie. It's okay, I was nervous too. You'll be just fine. The 2 men standing at the entrance asked if they were ready, and they said they were. The couple had decided to go the non-traditional route and chose the song Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis Presley. Kaminari looked to the side to see his girlfriend with a mic in her hands. Their eyes met, and the love in them could be seen from a mile away. She raised the mic to her lips, as she kept her eyes on him.
Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. Shall I stay
I entrust him to you, Katsuki. He softly smiled at her, barely controlling his tears. Thank you. He held out his hand, and Deku grabbed it without hesitation. They stood across from each other, and Bakugo looked down into his lover's eyes. You look so beautiful. The younger smiled up at him, with small tears forming in his eyes. You look quite handsome yourself. They both softly giggled as they smiled, and then let go of each other's hand so that the ceremony could start. As the ceremony continued, they were both only half attentive to it. They listened just enough to do what they needed to, but the rest of their attention was on each other. It was as if nothing and no one else was around them. It was only them, in a church, and extremely in love. Katsuki, your vows. Katsuki's eyes widened, and he snapped back into reality. Sorry? Everyone started laughing, and his groom joined it. Kachan, your vows. Oh yeah. He reached into one of his inner pockets, but couldn't find it. He paused before patting all of his pockets, to find that the paper with his vows written on it was gone. The blonde slumped over and sighed. Well, I had a vow prepared, but I guess I'm just gonna have to ad-lib. He grabbed his lover's hands and looked into his eyes. I've told you this before, and I will tell you every day for as long as we live. Izuku, I love you beyond what words could say. I didn't know what love was until I met you. You always shined so bright, no matter what happened, and it honestly scared me for years. But you brought me out of the dark, and accepted me with all my good and bad. You forgave me when I couldn't forgive myself. You gave my life meaning, a purpose. You taught me how to hope, and your strength gave me courage. I don't know where I'd be without you. I've been waiting for this day for years. So far back that I can't even remember when. All I know is that from the very start, I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. Thank you for choosing me, and for making me the happiest person to have ever lived. Deku was almost sobbing when he heard his lover's words. He wasn't even sure if he could say his own without crying. Izuku, your vows. The green-haired man composed himself as best as he could. Kachan, you have always been in my life, and I feel so fortunate that you have. You pulled me out of the dark, quite literally. Whenever I lost myself, you were always there to be by my side. You fought alongside me as a friend, as a hero, and for a while now, as my partner. I am who I am today because of you. You pushed me to become better than I could have ever imagined, and you gave me hope for a better future. A future with you. I want to live my life with you, grow old, and spend every single second of every day with you. I can't imagine a life without you, so I stand before you today, thanking you for deciding to be a part of my life, and for choosing to spend the rest of yours with me. I love you so much. Deku saw his partner shed tears, and the temptation to kiss him on the spot was so strong. Izuku Midoriya, do you take this man to be your husband, to live together in matrimony, to love him, to honor him, to comfort him, and to keep him in sickness and health, forsaking all others, for as long as you both shall live? I do. Katsuki Bakugo, do you take this man to be your husband, to live together in matrimony, to love him, to honor him, to comfort him, and to keep him in sickness and health, forsaking all others, for as long as you both shall live? I do. The two then repeated the priest's words. I, Katsuki Bakugo, Izuku Midoriya, take you, Izuku Midoriya, Katsuki Bakugo, to be my husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. They then exchanged rings. By virtue of the authority vested in me under the laws of Musutafu, I now pronounce you husband and husband. He looked at Bakugo. You may kiss the groom. They both leaned in for the kiss, when they suddenly heard a loud bang from the entrance of the church. On instinct, all the heroes stood up ready to fight. There was a man that was standing at the end of the aisle breathing heavily. He was tall, with dark hair, and had a short beard. The man wore an embarrassed and nervous smile, as all eyes were on him. I'm not late, am I? Deku and his mother stood there in shock, with their eyes wide. Dad? Bakugo looked back and forth between the father and son, piecing it all together. The third time he looked down at his husband, Bakugo felt Deku's hands on his cheeks. He had a smile so bright that it lit up the entire church. Kachan, kiss me. The older smiled down at him and gave him a love-filled kiss. Everything turned out perfect.
So take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you. For I can't help falling in love with you.
Y'all, I was crying just taking the notes for the general plot. Loudly crying face. Purple heart. I had intended for both the wedding and reception to fit in this part, but my writer brain decided otherwise. Grinning face with smiling eyes and sweat drop. Since I'm not trying to make another hour-long video face with tears of joy, I decided to make part 4 the reception. However, I will most likely post part 4 in 2022, since I will be focusing on a Christmas and New Year's video. I know I said that I would post the Q&A after this, but it will more likely than not be posted at the beginning of 2022 as well. I'm sorry guys. I'll do my best to fit it in, but no promises. I hope you like the video, and I'll see you next time. Have a nice day. Smiling face with hearts. Red heart.